Hi everyone. So I'm going to demonstrate throwing a 3-pound cylinder for shaping. Reason why I'm not doing 5 pounds is because 5 pounds is a lot of clay. So people are always interested in being able to throw more on the wheel, get more height. So keep in mind when you start throwing with more clay, you'll need to add more pressure and have a little bit more control when you're throwing, right? And invariably your piece is going to be heavier too, right? So those are the kind of the things that will start messing with your head. Like people's, when they're learning throwing, myself included, I'm guilty of this. People's conception of weight and thrown work is a negative. Clay's heavy, right? So don't worry about the weight, and just worry about your technique, right? So I'm throwing right on the wheelhead. In a previous throwing demonstration, I had bat pins. Cylinders work well to take off the wheel without needing a bat, right? Bats take up huge amount of real estate, and we just don't have the space in here, right, for everyone to start using bats. So for tall and narrow, you don't need a bat. That's what we're going to be focusing on with the cylinder. So flat centering roughly gets it into center. Seal my bottom. If you notice, I use my right hand like a shaping tool. I'll first compress down and then work all the way to the side, right? That works for me. And then we'll begin cone wedging. I like working with a really soft clay. As you dig into our buckets, the clay is always a little bit more stiff on top. When you get into the center, the ooey gooey center, clay is a little bit more soft. Easier on the wrists. So for this cylinder, I want to kind of have an equal distance between height on the wheel and width of the mound. So this is a good place to start. Opening. Depending on what you're throwing, you can set this up for trimming the bottom, or you can just have it flat, right? So when I open with my thumb, I want to make sure to compress that base again with my sponge. And then again, checking the thickness of your base. Right? That's pretty good. I don't need to do anything to that. That's perfect for trimming, and that's perfect to just have it flat. Right? If you open and your base is too thick, you can always open more up, right? You can't add to that, right? If you open all the way down to your wheel head, game over. Game over, man. So, from here, I want to bring this in a little bit. My walls are starting to move outward. From cylinders, we want to throw a cone shape. Bowls are more open. Right now this is set up more for a bowl. So how I adjust this is with even pressure, I'll press in from the side, and that begins to lift my wall of clay, and then I will start at the base with my sponge on my outside hand and press in, and move upward. My left hand is really a guide. You can see my left finger here collecting slip as I move upward on the inside. There's a little bit of pressure in there on the first pull, not a whole lot. So again, I want to start at the base here and want to press in and get that groove started. And then I'll slowly work up my cylinder, right? Slow and steady. Because it'll become a little awkward positioning. Because from here, you want to have your hand straight up and down as you can. Right? If my arm is just right here, I'm not going to get much height. But if you can get your arm straight up and down, that'll give you more of an ergonomic hand position on your cylinder. So we'll begin pressing on the outside, squeezing a little bit on the inside. And if I ever feel like I need to stop, I can always stop and come back to my hand position, right? It's just right there. So as things are starting to get a little taller, things may be thrown off center a little bit, and to bring things back into center, you can do what's called collaring. Collaring is another throwing technique to pinch the clay together, compress from being wide down into narrow, and you'll get a little bit more height from it as well. So in collaring, this is how I like to collar, is I'll press my sponge in one hand down at the base, and then my left hand will reach around and grasp that groove that's between my thumb and middle finger. So I'll start that groove with my sponge. I'll support with my right thumb and middle finger. Squeeze and collar this up together. So some of you may have stumbled upon this yourself. I've seen a couple people already doing this, and it gets you height, which is great, but it also narrows everything together. So, you know, if you keep doing this, it's just gonna be this, you know, small, hold, tall cylinder, which can work well for a candle holder or something like that. But I want to take this just a little bit more further. So from here, collaring that in, we kind of bound up the clay on the inside, and when we move with the next pull, it will get a little bit more height. So this is where I'll stand up, and this takes some practice. My foot is on the wheel right now, and you know, I'm changing the speed with it. I've kind of got my left leg is going to be supported on the wheel, and I want to make sure my wall on the inside has got some water on it, because as you can see, it's going to be a little tight squeeze. Right? So pressing on the outside, squeezing that clay from the inside, pinching that together, and then moving up. I'm not going that fast. I am letting everything rotate one full rotation on the wheel before I move my hands up. Right? So you can see how this is starting to wobble, and it's a pretty telltale sign that I've hit my limit with thickness, and I've stretched or pulled the clay to its limit that it can go on the base, right? Because as I add pressure up here, it will also affect the structure here. So if it's too thin, it's going to twist, and then it'll just slump down on itself, and we don't want to do that, right? So from here, I want to smooth up these lines. So letting my rib, that edge, right along that clay, I'm taking off all that extra slip, right? And then from there, you can have one more shaping pull, using your rib as your outside tool and pressing that upward, right? So I'm beginning to get a really nice egg-shaped vase here. And I may go back through and just take off a little bit more of that slit. I was just kind of looking a little wet. Great. So for shaping a cylinder, when you get to this point, I mean, having a really nice, tall, even cylinder is really attractive, but I encourage you to take it one step further and see what can be done about shaping your cylinder, right? So what I want to do first is remove the excess clay that I don't need. Right, this cleans up the base. Helps me think about what I want to do with shaping. So if your cylinder is a little tight for your hand, this is really tight for me. You want to make sure that your hand has water on it, and maybe even take your sponge and just line the walls with water so you have a slick surface for the clay to kind of glide over your hand. Otherwise it'll again crumple from friction. Okay, so from here you can do the old Potter lean and put your left hand on your left leg, and I can see what's happening to the side here, and I think I'm going to just begin stretching out the bottom, which will kind of stretch out a little bit in the center too, because, well, my hand's big, right? But this is a nice shape, right? It's kind of figurative. Got hips and shoulders and a neck. So what I'm doing with my sponge is pressing from the inside out, and you can see how that's rounding the base. All I'm doing is just adding equal, constant pressure. And then my bulge right here on my big old gorilla paws is pressing out the clay right here, and which isn't a bad thing, you know. It's kind of putting a nice shape on this, so I might keep it. So if you wanted to round this out, you just take your sponge and just work it up until it presses out a little bit. I could press this little section out right here to make a nice transition. I like what's going on with this, so I think I'm going to keep it. And then from here, you know, you can go back to your rib and shape from the outside, right? So using this edge, this round part, and I can really smooth the lines out as I like to. And then this straight edge right here works really well for rounding out the base. So again, be careful with these metal ribs. They can cut you, right? So be careful with using them. And now I have that base shaped. I can come back to my middle here and just press out. Maybe trying to mirror that shape on the bottom. And so we'll have this wave form moving up to the top. Right? So this is really fun to take your time with. Like, you can really get lost in shaping a vase. Right? So I have this gourd kind of looking thing that I'm making, and here I have a decision to make. I can collar this in a little bit to make more of like a bottle shape, or I can flare it out a little bit and have a nice flower vase, right? I think that'll work really nicely. Okay, so most of my shaping I love doing with these metal ribs. You just get a really nice line, a really nice edge, really lovely transitions. Just letting the clay glide over the clay. Letting the rib glide over the clay, and you get this really nice flowing form of a vase, right? So I think that's where I'm going to stop it. Again, as always, I'll clean up the rim just a little bit, taking my sponge, running it over the edge, smoothing out those rough lines, and I will begin to take this off the wheel. Looks good. Another thing to keep in mind is make sure you get that water that's sitting at the base of your pot. I don't have any down there, but we have sponges on a stick in the back by Community Tools, and you just drop it in. So cutting off my base, I want to make sure my surface is clean before I do that. Wiping off my hands, and then I can pick up and move it onto a bat. Right? So there's a cylinder. Right? Start with 3 pounds and work your way up from there. Right? 3 pounds is plenty to play around with and try to get more height with your cylinders. Okay? We'll see you soon.